John Wesley Hardin was a friend to the poor. I can't ever hit that note. To the poor. Traveled with a gun in every hand. See, I've got a lot of problems with this song. Like, I enjoy it. I enjoy that whole turn that Dylan took in the late 60s going to the 70s with a kind of Western kind of feel like this. John Wesley Hardin and Durango. Those are some... I don't really enjoy a lot of Dylan, but I enjoy those two albums. But why is it John Wesley Hardin? The man's name was Hardin. Like, was he so zonked out on pills and pot that he didn't know the man's name is Hardin? John Wesley Hardin. I don't know. Anyway, we're talking about John Wesley Hardin on this episode of Chandler's Travels, and some of his connections to the Brazos Valley, especially in Brenham, Texas. Now known mostly because of Blue Bell ice cream. At one point was one of the wickedest, wildest towns in the Old West. And John Wesley Hardin played a part in all of that. So hope you'll enjoy this. I don't know the rest of the lyrics because I don't think anyone does, especially not Dylan. It's just and then some harmonica. What are you still doing here? Go to the titles. Howdy, I'm here outside of Tubin Pocket Park in Brenham. It's a nice little park that's just sandwiched in between two historic buildings here in downtown Brenham. The courthouse is just a little bit up the road that way. We're talking about some of the outlaw past of Brenham. If anyone knows of Brenham in the first place, they likely know it as the home of Blue Bell ice cream. But if you were here in the 1860s, 70s, 80s, Brenham was a Wild West town and home to some of the most infamous outlaws in Texas and American history. And we're kind of doing a three-part series on the life of John Wesley Hardin. And we're not even covering his entire life. But I thought it'd be important to set up some of the reasons why we'd talk about John Wesley Hardin. Who was he? In Texas, almost every family will say that they're related to Quanah Parker or John Wesley Hardin, and a lot of families say that they're related to both. John Wesley Hardin has this mythic quality about him. He was an outlaw, killed his first man by the age of 15. Some say he notched up to 50 on his handgun before he was finally put away. He is the consummate outlaw for this area of Texas, for all of Texas. And his story has a lot to do with what happened right here in Brenham. He had an uncle, Uncle Bob. He was known to the whole community as Uncle Bob Hardin. And already by the age of 17, John Wesley had gotten himself in enough trouble that he wanted to try and retire from the outlaw business and see if he could make it as a farmer with his Uncle Bob. So it was his Uncle Bob and his aunt, and there was Joseph and John and a couple sisters that lived in a farm just on the outskirts here in Brenham. Hardin already had quite the treasure trove of winnings, either legally or illegally got, and didn't want to deposit them into one of the legitimate banks here, so gave all of the money to his aunt and would ask for some of that money back before he and the two brothers would come here, hitch their horse outside of the courthouse, and then see all the different gambling and saloon halls that just abounded here in Brenham. One time he got such a winnings from roulette that he had to make up a whole story to his aunt on why he was coming back with more money than he left with. So John Wesley Hardin was hanging around Brenham all the time. There was another man who goes on to later fame in the Wild West, Phil Coe. Phil Coe's family is one of the founding families of Washington here in Texas. So Phil Coe was hanging around these streets in early 1870 and taught John Wesley Hardin how to play 7-Up. And Hardin got so good at it that became his nickname, was Little 7-Up. He's only 17 years old. So Hardin would come into Brenham, would play roulette, would play 7-Up, maybe some poker, things like that. So Hardin was having all this fun as a gambler, as a roustabout here in Brenham, but maybe a little bit too much fun, and really missed his life of being out on the road as an outlaw. And even though he says that he was an excellent plowman, helping with all of the corn crop and cotton crop that the Hardins were raising, he couldn't even stay long enough for it to actually all come up for harvest. He left pretty soon, a few months, and began his, or restarted his infamous career of his outlaw life, starting first in Evergreen, Texas, which we will be visiting very shortly. But when you look around and you see the pleasant town of Brenham, it's all the lovely little shops, antique shops, ice cream shops, all those things. It's hard to believe that at one time this was a rootin', tootin', shootin' spot, and one of the most infamous outlaws all of Texas history, John Wesley Hardin, walked these very streets. So in doing research about John Wesley Hardin and his time here in Brenham, I came across a couple of other stories that are not directly related to John Wesley Hardin, but they involve people that he was familiar with. So the first story I want to talk to you about involves the Hardin family. So Uncle Bob Hardin, the sons John and Joe, and one of the daughters ends up marrying a man named John Birch. And apparently there was some contentious relations between the daughter and her husband and the Hardin family. And apparently Mr. Birch was very rude to his wife, and the Hardin family did not care for that at all. While I couldn't find anything of physical abuse, there was emotional and verbal abuse, to the point that she left the Birch family and came back to live with her father for a little bit, and then went back. Well, come July 19th of 1879, this animosity between John Birch and the Hardin family kind of reached a fever pitch. And so somewhere along this side of the courthouse, there was a bookstore. And outside of that bookstore was the Hardin family. So Uncle Bob, who was in his 60s or 70s by that point, and the two sons, John and Joe, and another friend named William Morgan. Well, as they are sitting out on a Saturday morning, about 10 a.m., who should appear but John Birch? And John Birch apparently had his hands very close to his pocket, maybe actually inside the pockets. It's unclear. But as he approaches, Joe Hardin says, "You damn son of a bitch, you'd better not be coming around here, throw him up." And then the father, Uncle Bob, says he gets his stick. He just has his old walking stick. He says, "You're not welcome here. You better turn around and get your hands away from your pockets." And then John pulls his gun out and sticks it right in the face of John Birch. And Birch throws his left hand away to get the gun out of his face and starts stumbling backwards. At that time, Joe also gets his gun out, and they both fire. John and Joe both fire at John Birch. And whether he was actually in the sidewalk, one account actually said he made it into the middle of the street. He gets hit in the neck. Not killed immediately, but a wound enough. He's bleeding everywhere. Joe fires his shot and it almost hits his head, John Birch's head, but it misses. So now there's 2 shots that have been fired, and then 2 more that follow it. And then Joe starts taking off. He starts running off of Sandy Street. That is now Alamo Street here in Brenham. At that same time, Officer Doran, he was at the drugstore. I'm not exactly sure where the drugstore was, but somewhere in the vicinity of the courthouse. He hears these 4 shots. He starts running towards now this commotion, this body that is out in the middle of the ground, and Old Man Hardin, who's still there, and John Hardin, and he sees Joe run off. Well, Officer Doran starts taking off on foot to catch up to Joe, and he gets winded. And so he is on the side of the street. He's breathing heavily. John comes up and says, "Hey, give me your gun. I'll go after him." And Officer Doran has no idea that John is the brother of the assailant. So he just gives in and gives him his gun. And so then the 2 brothers go running off towards Camptown. That's the African American, the freedmen community in Brenham. And then they just keep on going before Doran even realizes that he has inadvertently given the accomplice his weapon. But Birch stayed alive somehow. They got him to a doctor and they patched him up, and he was able to give a full account of what happened, as did Old Man Hardin. But I was not able to see if this actually went to court or what happened afterwards. But you can see in the way that the tempers flew that John Wesley may not have been the only troublemaker in his family. The Hardins certainly had a fighting streak in them. What's also really interesting is that when I walked the perimeter of the courthouse, they have a monument recognizing the service of Robert Hardin Birch. I'm thinking that might be the son of John Birch and the Hardin daughter. So they had a union enough for the child to be born, and he becomes a prominent citizen going into the late 1800s and into the 19-teens here in Brenham, I think as a constable. So very interesting that he is taking up the badge, as many of the Hardins were not known for taking up the badge. But that is just one of the stories that I came across regarding the Hardin family here in Brenham. This is the final resting place of Robert Hardin, affectionately known as Uncle Bob Hardin. He was not just the uncle of John Wesley Hardin, but sort of an uncle to the whole community. He had a farm just outside the skirts of Brenham, coming here, I believe, in the late 1840s, around 1848 or 49, and was a prominent citizen here in Brenham, and probably those best known for being the uncle of John Wesley Hardin. As we've talked about before, John Wesley came to Brenham in 1870, lived here and worked on Uncle Bob's farm for about 6 months or so. and got into some trouble with Phil Coe and other outlaws of that ilk, and then ended up leaving. Uncle Bob and his sons, John and Joe, and the daughters and his wife continued to live in Brenham. I'm not quite sure how John Wesley's notoriety affected them, but in any case, they continued to live their lives here in Brenham, and Uncle Bob passed away in 1881, quite a ripe old age, and then was laid to rest here at the Prairie Lee Cemetery. This is the final resting place of Phil Coe. Phil Coe is one of the characters that comes up when you study Old West history. His story begins here in Texas. The Coes were some of the founding members here in Washington County, but he would actually grow up away from Washington, and he would serve in the Confederate Army for the Civil War, part of that service being with Terry's Texas Rangers. After the war, he links up with another one of Terry's Texas Rangers and another one of these figures that pops up over and over again, an Englishman by the name of Ben Thompson. Ben and Phil, so the legend might go, is they both go into Mexico and fight for the French Emperor Maximilian. So you know the whole story of Cinco de Mayo. These guys were fighting on the other side, not for the Mexican army, but for the French army. After Maximilian is defeated, Ben and Phil come back here to Texas. Phil lives with his family here in the Washington area. That's where the story picks back up with what we've been talking about before. He meets a young John Wesley Hardin, teaches him how to play 7-Up, and loses quite a bit of money to him. In 1870, so a little bit after Wesley Hardin leaves Washington, Phil Coe leaves as well. He drives a herd of cattle up to Abilene. Once he gets to Abilene, he meets up with his old friend again, Ben Thompson, and they open the Bull's Head Tavern. And Bull's head might not be referring to the head of a bull. As one of the stories goes, the painting on the sign for the Bull's Head Tavern had a bull that was visibly aroused. The ladies, what ladies there were in Abilene, were pretty upset at seeing this, and asked the marshal, Wild Bill Hickok, to do something about it. And that was one of the bones of contention between Phil Coe and Wild Bill Hickok. Another one being that they loved the same soiled dove. I believe her name was Josephine Hazel. The love triangle, the being on opposite sides of the wall, the fact that Wild Bill was from the north and Phil Coe was from Texas, led to lots of disagreements, and the ultimate disagreement happening in October of 1871 when the two got into a shootout. During the shootout, Wild Bill hit Phil Coe. He also hit his own deputy, and that was the last time that Wild Bill would fire on people again. He would go into show business, go into buffalo hunting, go into gold mining, but no more actually shooting and killing people. Phil Coe would die 3 days after, and then his body was brought here to Washington and was laid to rest here at Prairie Lee Cemetery in Brenham. The legacy of Phil Coe, it changes the cattle drives because of what happened with Wild Bill and these Texas cowboys in Abilene. Abilene shuts its doors to the cowboys. So all the cattle herds are no longer going to Abilene. They have to stop at either Wichita or Dodge City. So new trails are formed. It transforms. Unfortunately, for Phil Coe, his passing would lead to new trails being founded and a new way of life for towns like Wichita and Dodge City, and new stories of the Old West to be told. All of those would be happening, though, without Phil Coe. But very interesting that this was his neck of the woods. Brenham, Texas, was where he would enjoy some of his life and where his family got started here in Texas. Well, if you're interested in visiting the graves of Phil Coe and Uncle Bob Hardin, or even if you're just a fan of antique cemeteries, I would recommend that you come here to Prairie Lea Cemetery. I showed up here. I knew the digits of where the graves I wanted to see were, but not exactly how that translated to the actual site here. And there was a gentleman who was working here who helped me. I said, I'm looking for Phil Coe, which I'm assuming strangers to the community, if you're not coming here to see one of your own relatives, Phil Coe's probably one of the number one people that you're coming to see. And he knew exactly, yep, it's section 2, range 2, I'll take you right there, and lickety split. Whereas Bat Masterson likes to say lickety bang. So highly recommend, great staff that is here. And come out, and if that's something that you enjoy, this is a wonderful, peaceful spot to take a look at some of the founding members of this community and some of the people who lived and worked here in Brenham. So, talking about John Wesley Hardin here in Brenham, there's another character who pops up in the story that, well, it's rather interesting. His name is Harry Swain, and John Wesley Hardin talks about him like he is one of his best friends, one of his closest allies. But what's really interesting about that is that Harry Swain is the deputy town marshal for Brenham. So why the deputy town marshal is best friends with one of the best known outlaws in Texas history, not quite sure how that story took place. Now, maybe it was because of family. I think Harry Swain married one of the cousins of John Wesley Hardin, but we're just not completely sure. It could just be politics. I mean, this is during the time of Reconstruction, and John Wesley Hardin took on this persona of being someone who was he was fighting against the authorities. Well, the authorities at that time in Reconstruction Texas were all Union soldiers. So for all those who were veterans of the Civil War, as I think Harry Swain would have been, or all the families of those veterans, it would have meant something that John Wesley Hardin was fighting against these authorities. Now, was John Wesley Hardin fighting against these authorities because they were Union soldiers or because they were in his way? That's up for anyone else to decide. But either way, Harry Swain and John Wesley Hardin were like this. Eventually, as John Wesley Hardin makes his escape from Texas going towards Florida, he meets up with Harry Swain. Harry gets him supplies in New Orleans. So they're tied together by all sorts of different lines. And they are so close that when John Wesley Hardin gets to Florida, his alias is Swain. He calls himself John Swain. So after Harry Swain. So the whole last part of John Wesley Hardin's criminal career, he is going by the name of the town marshal here in Brenham. But I want to share a little story about Harry Swain that starts off here on Alamo Street. Now, back in the 1880s, this was known as Sandy Street. And I'm not quite sure if it's one of these buildings behind me or one of these other ones as we go by them. But the there's a shootout essentially that occurs right in the heart of downtown Brenham, and I wanted to kind of walk in the footsteps of that shootout. So starts off here on Sandy Street, and one of these shops, there's a disagreement between a man named Tom Daschle and an African American gentleman, and during the disagreement, Daschle pulls out his 6-gun and threatens the black gentleman. And once that happens, there's a whole bunch of commotion. No one actually gets hurt, but the store owner and the black gentleman, they decide that the best thing is to go and try and press charges. So the black guy, he starts heading in the direction that I'm going, towards the courthouse. So it may have been one of these buildings right here where this initial conflict started. So as he is going to the courthouse to file charges, John Wesley Hardin Tom Daschle steals a horse. So one of the horses that would have been tied up along the street here. So they both start heading in this direction. So we are almost to the courthouse. That's where the black gentleman would have filed his complaint, and Constable Crozer would have been sent to apprehend Tom Daschle. Tom Daschle, on his stolen horse, is also going up Sandy Street, and he would eventually hit this corner and take a left. So Tom Daschle takes a left on Park Street and starts heading towards the railroad tracks. As he's going in this direction, Officer Crozier is coming from the courthouse and on foot heading to the railroad tracks. I'm not quite sure. At a certain point during this whole journey, Daschle just starts getting his 6 guns out and just starts shooting up the place, shooting up in the air. Not right now. He might just be still fleeing the scene, but he will eventually get to the railroad tracks. And once there, the saddle unties from the horse, so he falls down, and Officer Crozier comes upon him. So here at the train tracks, the saddle falls off of Tom Daschle's horse. Officer Crozier comes upon him. Some guy from we don't know where, he goes and gets the saddle and puts it back on the horse for our outlaw Tom Daschle. The officer, Crozier, comes upon Tom Daschle, and Daschle starts firing, threatening at Crozier. Then the horse gets saddled. Tom Daschle hops back on the horse, decides not to flee, but to go back into town. So he goes into town. He eventually makes it onto Main Street, which is still named Main Street. Alamo Street or Sandy Street is now Alamo Street. That made it a little difficult to figure out all of where this story took place. But as he rides past the constable, continues back into the town, he is firing every which direction with his 6-gun. So we'll pick back up at another point in the story that happens on Main Street. So you remember all the times that I was in the Panhandle? I was talking about how nice and dry it was in August. It's October here in Brenham, and it's not nice, and it's not dry. Not at all. So Tom Daschle makes his way from the railroad tracks to Main Street. He goes up and down Main Street. He stops in front of the Opera House, and he says, he fires his guns up in the air. He says, there's not a one of your damned officers that can stop me. He just keeps firing. He empties all of his shells. He goes to the hardware store to buy more shells. There, he comes across Harry Swain. So the whole reason that I got into this story was because of Harry Swain, John Wesley Hardin's, I guess, best friend, was at the hardware store. He's the deputy marshal for Brenham. He tries to stop Daschle. As Harry Swain is getting his gun out of its holster, it goes off. So it alerts Harry Swain. They start exchanging fire in the hardware store. Daschle gets onto his horse, starts going back down Main Street. There doesn't seem to be many casualties from the gunplay that happened here in November of 1881, except for one. So when Daschle makes his way, he's coming, almost has escaped completely out of the main downtown area. There's a place called Simon's Corner, and Mr. Neblet was there, and Mr. Neblet's dog, Damscamps. And in one of the last shots that Daschle fired, he hit Damscamps in the paw. And Mr. Neblet had to get Damscamps's leg amputated. So Damscamps would walk on 3 legs for the rest of his life. But he did survive from this lively incident that happened on the streets of downtown Brenham in 1881. So if you didn't believe me before, let Damscamps tell you what a wild place Brenham was in the 1880s. I think, yeah, that's it for the Harry Swain portion of our little examination of downtown Brenham. Thing is swimming, the little mouse and Judas Priest and oh, I'm still doing my poor Bob Dylan impression, though I'm not sure you can really do a bad Bob Dylan impression because that's what Bob Dylan does. But hope you enjoyed this episode of Chandler's Travels, looking into the life of John Wesley Hardin and how that played out here in Brenham. We'll be picking back up with John Wesley Hardin and more outlaw stories in the Brazos Valley in our next couple episodes. So I hope you've enjoyed this. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, subscribe, share, talk to friends about it. All that helps us in growing the audience so I can take even more people with me on my journeys. So thank you so much for watching, and vaya con Dios. John Wesley Hardin, millions of dollars, made millions.